Story 1. I haven't had a relationship end where I would be unwilling to help them at 1 a.m. if they needed it. However, if she is drunk and just wants to talk, I am hanging up. Story 2. Everything is all right. I have received enough distress calls in my life. I do not need that missed call hanging over me. Story 3. There is literally nothing they could say that would add value to my life or require acknowledgement. They were abusive and used to send me harmful videos, memes, and posts encouraging eating disorders. Story 4. After overcoming the fainting, hyperventilation would commence. Anyone else does not have access to me, so that would be unsettling. Story 5. If I answer without knowing who it is, I would say, "Don't call again. I hope your life turns out okay. Goodbye." Story 6. I expect it to be an emergency. If they really need help, I will be on the way in about 5 minutes. If not, they can leave. Story 7. One of them is to disconnect the call immediately. For a few others, I might actually answer, as they would probably need help or assistance. Story 8. All of my exes would only call that late for something very serious, and contacting me years later would be highly suspicious. What happened? Probably doesn't cover it, but is the most effective question. Story 9. Bro, why are you coming back again? I thought you specifically said you hated me and never cared about me. What do you want? Story 10. My phone is permanently on silent, so calls are never answered. In the morning, when I see the missed call notification, I check the call logs, press and hold, and delete it. Story 11. One of my exes is my best friend. We dated almost 20 years ago, and we are still each other's number one, platonically. Story 12. I need a little more detail. That's not what I would say to them. I'm just saying that to you. It could range from, "Come on down, you're the next contestant on Ride the Baloney Pony," to clearly, "You aren't following the restraining order," and anything in between. Story 13. Wrong timing, brother. Under different circumstances, I would have listened to you, but right now, my sleep takes priority. Story 14. I answered and then asked what the emergency was. I was once asked a frustrating question and told them never to call me about something like that again. Story 15. A call at 1 a.m. is unlikely to wake me. Even if it does, I probably do not have any of their numbers saved in my phone, so I likely would not answer an unknown number. Story 16. That ex is so long ago that they are now just a friend. Your current partner needs to get over it. It was disruptive for them to call in the middle of the night, but beyond that, it wasn't an issue. Story 17. It depends on what he has to say. We had a difficult teenage breakup, but now we are both adults and have long since made peace. We are both married and happy, so I would likely respond just to see how he is doing. Story 18. Well, it depends on the ex. If it's my ex-husband, I will ask him how he got my number. There are only 2 exes that I would help no matter what, because they have helped me when I needed it over the last 15 years. Story 19. Depends on the situation and what they want. It could range from telling them where to go and how to get there, to informing them that they need to move on and leave me alone, or quickly getting dressed and going over. Story 20. All my former partners are fantastic, so I would answer and ensure they are okay. I'm usually awake anyway, and they know that, so they either need to talk or something is wrong. Story 21. Sadly, I would have to respond if the children were in danger, but after that, I would just go back to sleep. Story 22. I'm either asleep or not answering. It would be weird. The only people I help at that hour are family. Story 23. My phone is on Do Not Disturb mode, so I would not see it until morning. I would not answer it anyway, as I do not know her number anymore, and if I do not recognize the number, I never answer. If I saw the missed call, I would immediately search the phone number, trying to play detective. Story 24. This actually happened the other night. It was around midnight when I crawled into bed and the phone rang. It was a woman I had a fling with, a fling that ended with us arguing and me blocking her number. She uses fake numbers to reach me and asks, "Are you still mad? I blocked your number because I don't want to see you again. Didn't you take that as a hint? The fact that I don't reach out to you at all should indicate that I genuinely don't want to talk to you. All week, She sent me texts about how she was homeless and hungry. Not my problem. On Friday night, around midnight, she calls me. Curious, I answered the phone. Hey baby, I need a ride to Garland. I replied, sorry. She said, I only have $5, and getting from your neighborhood to Garland costs almost $30. I need you to give me a ride. First, I didn't know she was in my neighborhood. I live in Dallas, and she could be anywhere in the city. Second, none of this is my problem. I'm not the one who dropped her off where she was. It looks like she upset yet another fling, and he left her there before driving off. Third, I am not helping her anymore. Finally, when it comes to her, I don't need to do anything for her. I replied, busy. She asked what I was busy with at midnight. I said, watching paint dry, and then hung up on her. I told the woman I am dating about it, and she laughed. Story 25. If anyone I know calls at 1 a.m., I am going to ask what's up. Most people, unless you are out with them, won't call you at 1 a.m. unless there is a problem. I don't think I have anyone I would not at least hear out at that time. Even if I'm not a fan, depending on how much I like them and the circumstances, I might still help. If I really dislike them but they have a real emergency where they might be hurt, I will help. However, if it's something that does not need immediate action, like a flat tire, I would suggest they figure it out themselves. It's a scale of how much I like someone and whether I can sleep well if I ignore the situation. Story 26. I wouldn't even recognize them because I've long forgotten their numbers. When I find out who it is, I would likely say, why are you calling me? It's been over a decade. Stop calling. Then I would hang up. Story 27. I can't be the one who passed away from cancer recently, so that leaves the one who cheated on me several times with 4 guys, married the 4th, and then years later cheated on him and left him for her newest husband. I will answer the phone because that's some interesting gossip. I'm not doing anything for her, but I want to hear how she messed up so badly that she's calling me. Story 28. My phone is set to silent during specific hours to avoid calls. For emergencies, contact professionals such as lawyers and doctors, as they are the appropriate individuals to reach out to. I'm not one of them. No hard feelings, just maintaining boundaries. Story 29. Only one person would be my ex-husband, and I would ask if he was okay. He is still my daughter's father, and we get along very well. I loved this man, then I didn't, but now we share love as friends and co-parents. I would always come to his aid if I am able, and he would do the same. Story 30. Regret from turning down a hand reaching out for help is bad, so take a moment to reflect on it. However, there is no point in trying to mend things at 1 a.m. Here are 2 reasons why. 1. It's inappropriate. Return to the conversation during work hours. Late night or drunken texts are not effective. Story 31. It doesn't get answered. I never want to speak, see, or hear from that individual again. Story 32. Why would I answer it in the first place? But for the sake of responding, I'll say, you have the wrong number. Hang up and block that number. That way, I no longer get involved. Story 33. I'm sorry, but the person you called has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet. Goodbye. They are blocked. That is all they would hear. Story 34. I have received late-night phone calls with requests to come over immediately. It drives me to get in the car and go. It is a total turn-on. Story 35. Since all 3 of my past relationships involved infidelity, I would assume that the reason they called me at 1 a.m. would be for help or because something happened. At that hour, I most likely would sleep through the call. Then, when I wake up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom, I would text them back and ask if everything is okay. Story 36. He called to say he was going to take his life, and I told him to go with God. Does the person cheat on me and then want to leave my life? Bear me. Story 37. A couple of years ago, I received a random text message saying, hey, how could you do this to my ex's name? That's a terrible thing you did. It was so unexpected for several reasons. 1. I hadn't spoken to or about that person in years. 2. I don't know who would text me something like that. 3. I didn't hit her, nor did I cheat on her. Sure, there were heightened emotions, but it wasn't anything bordering on abusive, so what gives? I can only assume that she found a new guy and talked negatively about me. When we were together, she often brought up how her ex was a bad person, to the point that I started to miss her ex after our breakup. Felt like I had grown attached to that person. Story 38. Easy, don't answer the phone. Silence is the key. Edit. Well, now that I think about it, that is for one individual. The rest I would probably pick up for and see what's up. If I could help, I would. Story 39. If they were drunk, I would listen to them talk until they fell asleep or the call ended. I would smile with a little tear and whisper, "I love you, silly," about him. If they called just to talk, I would listen, and before hanging up, I would tell them how much I love them, how amazing they are, and that they will be okay. They will get through whatever they are dealing with because there is so much fire in his heart that nothing could completely extinguish that flame. Story 40. I would have fun with them and talk as if time never passed, even though it had been decades. I'd discuss how my breakfast that morning was and how my dog behaved at the park. I would also get some chips and start crunching on them while talking. Lastly, I would interrupt and take over the conversation, continuing to talk about mundane topics. Then I try to keep them on the phone longer and attempt to bore them to death. Story 41. I experienced this when I was young, before the age of video calls. He was going through an emotional crisis with his father. His crises turned my life upside down for 2 years. We broke up because he hit me. I told him I could not be an emotional crutch anymore. He hung up. Story 42. How did you get my number? I am on a different continent and haven't spoken to them in 5 years. Story 43. Honestly, we broke up 27 years ago, and we are still friends. If she called me at 1 a.m., I would probably realize she really needed help from someone. My wife and I would likely try to help her through whatever she is dealing with. I would say, "My God, Sarah, is everything all right? What can I do to help?" Story 44. I'm not answering the phone to my ex outside of normal working hours, and only in an emergency or if I'm expecting an update from him about something. Story 45. Honestly, they wouldn't because none of them have this number. But if they did, I would probably see if they are okay. If it's just to be on nonsense, I'm hanging up because what do you want? Story 46. I have an unsettling stalker ex and a decent ex who is still somewhat involved in my life. If the unsettling one called me, I would be very alarmed and take steps to document the behavior. If the decent one called me, I would ask if he was okay and needed help, assuming he had unintentionally consumed too much alcohol and required a ride somewhere, as has happened before. Story 47. I'm good friends with my last 2 exes and would like to see how they are doing since I'm usually awake at 1 a.m. Story 48. Call them the wrong names until they get frustrated and hang up. Wait, is this Karen or Alex? No, don't tell me. I want to guess. Story 49. Depend on the experience. There are 2 people I will never talk to again. For any of my other exes, I am open to listening and seeing what they want or need. Story 50. My phone rejects all calls between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m., except for my parents, wife, son, and brother. I have been with my wife for nearly 30 years, so all my exes predate my ownership of a mobile phone. Story 51. My phone is always on airplane mode once I go to bed, so the chance of receiving a call is very slim. Otherwise, it remains on vibrate mode full time, so I just ignore phone calls if that is the case. Story 52. It wasn't 1 a.m. but quite late, and I made the mistake of answering the call. It didn't take long for her to ask for money because she was struggling financially and learned through mutual friends that I was doing well. She even has a new boyfriend, but he is also struggling financially. Story 53. My ex sent me a message at 11 p.m. in March last year. A simple, "Hey." I had several choices. "Hey, go away. Don't talk to me ever again. You had your chance." I chose to block her instead. I am married after all. Story 54. I think my girlfriend would find it inappropriate if I were speaking to my ex on the phone at 1 a.m. Text me if it's an emergency. Story 55. At 1 a.m., my phone is in night mode. 3 people can call me at that time, and none of them are my ex. Story 56. How did you get my number? In reality, I wouldn't actually be talking to him because I wouldn't have answered the phone in the first place. If I do not know a number that is not in my contacts, then I do not answer. This is how I avoid all spam calls. Story 57. Initially, nothing. That call is going to voicemail. I'm at work, and as a rule, I don't answer my phone while I'm working. If it was urgent, it would probably be, "Is everything all right?" Just because they are an ex-partner doesn't mean that I don't care. I may be many things, but intentionally heartless is not one of them. Story 58. You managed to stay away from me for almost 3 years. Let's keep it that way. Then I would hang up. Story 59. If they call me, what am I supposed to say? It seems she would want something from me at that point. It depends on what she wants and what's going on in my life. However, responding during those times is crucial for my ethics. I tend to think of worst-case scenarios for why someone would act that way. If I were in that position and was ready to talk to someone like an ex and ask something of them, I would want that person to at least pick up. Story 60. I have them blocked, so they wouldn't reach me. I'd ask what's up and then hang up while they were explaining. Story 61. Nothing. I'm already sleeping, and my phone is on Do Not Disturb. If they left a message, I would probably just delete it. Moving on is moving on. Story 62. I don't answer the phone, whether I know you or not, day or night. I haven't heard my ringer in decades. Story 63. If the numbers are not on my phone, I will not answer it. If it is important, they will call a second time or follow up with a text. Story 64. If my first wife called at 1 a.m., I would answer. We are on good terms with no lingering feelings. We are not friends, but we maintain a cordial relationship. I would assume the call relates to the children and respond accordingly. If it were my second wife, I would not answer. We are not friends, we do not have children together, and there is nothing to discuss. I would easily ignore that call. Story 65. Our child is with me, so you're not calling to tell me something happened to him. You better have a good reason for waking me up at 1 a.m. Story 66. Oh hey, are you okay? As much of a fool as he was, my ex was a good person. If he is calling at 1 a.m., he is probably in trouble. I am not heartless. Plus, he and my wife have met. I am safe. Story 67. I would likely answer if it were my recent ex, but I am uncertain about that. The others, no thank you. Story 68. It depends on the situation. For the most part, I'm not responding, but if I do, I'll let you know that I hope you're happy because you left me for him, and you actually did me a favor. Please lose my number and do not contact me again. Story 69. It kind of reminds me of that toxic ex calling me nonstop for 30 minutes after I rejected him repeatedly, and then I blocked him for good. I dislike those mentally unstable narcissists. Story 70. Considering it's been nearly 45 years since she broke up with me, I would say, what's wrong? However, I can't even imagine her calling me. It's a long story. Story 71. I wouldn't answer. Honestly, I haven't talked to an ex in over 20 years, so I have no idea why they would be calling. Story 72. Although there is pain in my chest, I still wish you the best. But forget you. No, but for real, I would probably not notice because my phone is out of the room during bedtime. Story 73. I would ask if they are unsafe and if they are completely safe but just intoxicated. So I would probably hang up. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.